Now that we've talked about the different types of data models, it's time to start looking at them. In this example conceptual model, you can see that, as we talked about, conceptual models generally have boxes for the concepts and relationship lines between them, but we're not seeing individual data items like employee first name or last name or employee ID. And that's because a conceptual data model is talking about sort of high-level pieces of information and groups of information that the enterprise uses to manage its operations, as well as to plan strategically. So what we see here in this data model is we have an employee concept or entity, a department, a job candidate concept, a shift, and an address. We also see down here a note, so a graphical representation of a sticky note that has a comment about the differences between employee and job candidate. It's very common to see data models that are marked up, especially working data models. This is a great way to include questions, to confirm facts or decisions that were made. You wouldn't want to overwhelm your data model with these, but it's a really great way of doing this, and it keeps these questions together with your model so that they are always there when someone looks at them. This is a much better way to handle working with the nuances of a data model and recording your questions and decisions than managing in a separate document or spreadsheet. That way, these questions can be versioned with the rest of the model, and you can also see that there are lines that we can use to tie the questions to the specific concepts or entities that we're talking about. So you can see that we have a relationship between employee and department. So I'll read this to you. Employee is assigned to 0 or more departments, and a department is assigned 0 or more employees. We'll see more about this in the next sections where we talk about more details in a logical data model. You can also see there's a special type of relationship for employee where an employee is managed by exactly 0 or 1 employees, and an employee manages 0 or more employees. This relationship makes what some people call a mouse ear around the same entity, and that's just a specific instance of what's called a referential relationship or a self-referential relationship, and sometimes, like I said, is called a mouse ear. So you can see some of the relationships are many-to-many on both ends. Those are called crow's feet, and sometimes they're just 0 or 1 to many. In a conceptual model, almost all your relationships will end up being many-to-many, and that's perfectly fine. But as we'll see in further sections, we will need to deal with these many-to-many relationships later. We can also drill down into entities to perhaps see the definition. And in this case, this definition comes from the original data model. This data model is based on a reference database design, a sample database design that comes with versions of SQL Server. And so the definitions themselves don't meet my standards for it. I would prefer to define employee as a person who works on a formal basis, either as full-time or part-time, and is salary or hourly rate. Something like that, rather than just listing the type of information in it. But we'll talk about data quality things with our data models later. So the most important thing to take away from this is that data models can be marked up, they can be dynamic, and a conceptual model is a high-level, usually entity-only plus relationships data model. In the next segment, we'll be talking about logical data models.